Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
We stand together. Reviews Without Remorse. All of us. I'm David. With me is Joe. And this is episode 125. And in this show, we will discuss... Little-known but influential producer Ben Barenholtz has died. Joe and I will cover his contribution to film. Billy Drago, the man with a face for villainy, has also died. Joe and I will pay our respects. Charlie's Angels is getting another reboot movie, and a trailer just dropped. Let's have a look, shall we? And then, the original era X-Men movies come to a close. Joe and I take a look as Brett Ratner takes the reins on X-Men: The Last Stand. Welcome back home.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting with me on my little schedule. Again, I'm not so much jet lagged as much as I can't seem to sleep at night because I'm just sort of keyed up and wired from the trip. But yeah, all in all, it was a pretty spectacular journey.
I saw that little video you sent me. That seems fascinating. You still didn't reveal a lot. You actually were, tempering yourself with revealing a lot of what happened. But it does sound tantalizing.
It's weird. Yes, it is. And by the way, if you're wondering what the hell we're talking about, I went to London for something called Secret Cinema Casino Royale, which is a live interactive event based on the film Casino Royale. And yeah, it's weird because again, and I am going to do a kind of a follow-up review of it, but it's tricky because you don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So yeah, so basically it'll be me just saying, yeah, it's really good. But yeah, it was spectacular. We had a great time. Mary was with me. She had a great time. So very worth the jet lag, believe me, and the lost luggage.
You lost luggage? Oh, shoot.
They lost Mary's luggage and my luggage, and somehow each one went to two different airports. So this airline found two ways to lose our luggage. It was pretty amazing.
That's almost impressive. Almost impressive.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, on with the show, my friend.
So, Ben Barenholtz there's not a lot known about when he was born. All we have is October 1935. What we can talk about is his contribution to film. Now, his first big contribution to film was in 1968. He opened a cinema called the Elgin. And this was the first theater specifically made for revival films. So he would show like old Buster Keaton films and things like that. He also used this theater to launch the midnight movie concept with Pink Flamingos, Perry Hensel's The Harder They Come, Jodorowsky's El Topo. This was all his idea. But probably his biggest influence to film would be that he launched, distributed, produced the careers of the Coen brothers, and was very much influential on the career of David Lynch. He died June 26th, 2019 in Prague. And if you're wondering just how much of an influence he has, you can read, there's a ton of articles out there of tributes from the Coen brothers, tributes from Tarantino, talking about what an amazing influence this man had on cinema. David Lynch himself has said, Ben saved my life in films. I didn't know a lot about this man until his obituary hit, and then I started reading up on him, and the minute I started reading up on him, I was like, we have to cover him. He was a Holocaust survivor, a film connoisseur, just an amazing man who gave so much to cinema. He created, it's like, if you think about it, in a weird way, he created the entire underground film movement, the independent film movement of the 70s and 80s. You know? So, hail and farewell, Ben. Sorry that I didn't get to know you better.
Nicely done, my friend. And I'm glad, every once in a while you'll pull out a name. I shouldn't say every once in a while. It's getting pretty frequent. But you'll pull out a name that I've never heard of before. And once you tell me why we're talking about him, my appreciation skyrockets. And I'm glad that you are on that on the stick, my friend. So nicely done.
Here I am, treasure man. Come on. Harass me. What are you waiting for? Don't just stand there. Harass me.
Don't push me. They're gonna burn you, buddy.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm gonna come see you burn, you son of a bitch, because you killed my friend.
He died like a pig.
What did you say?
I said that your friend died screaming like a stuck Irish pig. Now you think about that when I beat the rat.
Which brings us to our next man. Now, trust me, Billy Drago is not a name that many people know. Even though, the dude has, this villainous name, and he's got this villainous-looking face. But from everything I hear about the guy, supposedly he was just a really nice guy. He just was really good at playing a dick. He was born in Kansas, November 30th, 1945. If you want to talk about his biggest claim to fame, it has to be The Untouchables, playing the part of Needy, who was Al Capone's main enforcer up against the rest of them. But he's always played a villain. I mean, if you look at and when I say this guy has been around for a while, 115 credits to his name. Okay? He was in Pale Rider. He was on The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., which, by the way, is a show that doesn't get a lot of love. People need to check that out even more. He was in True Blood, Blood Money, Walker, Texas Ranger, of course. This guy has been in just about, you look at his list of films and TV shows that he's been in, and he's, touched everything. And it's pretty obvious, because he looks like a guy that you don't want to mess with, you know?
Hmm.
Go ahead.
Nothing. Nothing. Yes, he does have that look. You get, like you said, a guy you would not want to mess with. And when I looked him up, I had that flashback. He died like a pig.
Which is pretty much the quote I'm probably going to use, unfortunately. He died June 24th at the age of 73. My goodness. From a stroke. And like I said, he definitely was. He's a face you'll know. The minute you see him, everybody's going to be like, oh, yeah, that guy. So, and he probably won't get any love from the Oscars. So that's half the reason I look up the obscure deaths, because I know that they're going to be the ones that the Oscars are just going to ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done, my friend.
I think women can do anything.
Just because they can doesn't mean they should.
But I have so many talents.
It's like I'm powerful with a little bit of tender.
I'm just a decoy stud.
That's just the way you make me feel.
Who steals humanitarian aid money?
Outstanding angels.
Written by Elizabeth Banks and directed by Elizabeth Banks, 2019 is bringing us a brand new Charlie's Angels. Starring, Bella Swan from the Twilight movies, from the recent Aladdin movie, Jasmine, and I don't know the other person, I apologize, with special appearance by Patrick Stewart, Djimon Hounsou, and Elizabeth Banks herself playing Bosley. So, Joe, the trailer, what'd you think?
Well, I think it's pretty impressive. It's a feat, I should say. I believe I have a new candidate for the worst trailer ever. And I mean the worst trailer ever. Not only is this a trailer for a movie that I have no interest in, the trailer made it very clear that I have no interest in this whatsoever, but the trailer was so poorly done, I could barely make sense of what it even is. I mean, even the audio of the trailer was terrible. It was so lacking in any kind of coherence that should give me an idea of what this film is about. Wow, does this look terrible. And I mean terrible.
So here's the one thing that I did appreciate about this movie. Now, if you remember the Charlie's Angels, duology, the one with Drew Barrymore. Okay, the big thing with those was that she was very adamant, they won't use guns. So it'll always be like these fight scenes. Now, I kind of enjoyed them for the cheesiness of them. I kind of appreciated here that they kind of went back to, no, these are cops, they're going to have guns. So part of me is like, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you for actually being a little more realistic about it in this day and age. Because you're not going to go up against villains and like, oh, look, they've got guns, but we've just got our hands and feet. So we could take that. Yeah, no, guns will probably kick your butt before you get close enough. On the other hand, I question everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like... I feel like there's a ripe tale to retell in Charlie's Angels. I don't feel like they've shown anything here that makes me say that they get it. You know?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this is like a 21st century reimagining, which I understand the show came out in the 70s, over just about 40 years ago and everything like that, and some things need to be updated, but I don't know, man. It's just like, at this point, I think I would have appreciated it a little bit more if it was just, not named Charlie's Angels. You kind of slap on the title of Charlie's Angels, there's certain expectations, okay? This feels more like a remake of the Drew Barrymore movies than it does the TV show, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing just looks... Well, the kicker, honestly, I thought by the time they got into the, there was a shot where something about go into the closet. And they go into the closet, and there's this big, magnificent room of clothing and shoes. I feel like I'm trying to do my best. Girls like shoes, girls like clothing. Okay, fine, we get it. Then they go, oh, but you didn't look in the other closet. And that's where all the guns and the undercovers gadgets are. All the gadgets were in the other closet. Right. And she grabs something and says, ooh, what's this? A guy slaps it out of her hand and says, don't touch anything. These things blow up. First of all, I'm like, good Lord. I just saw John Wick 3. I've seen both Kingsman movies are recent. Like, this is like so unimaginative at this point. Like, combine that with the fact that the guy slaps something out of her hands onto the floor and says, these things blow up. Now that don't make a lot of sense, now does it? So,
now that these girls are supposed to be experts.
I mean, oh God, it looks just awful. And and again, it's all made up. It looks like a music video. So it honestly just looks like a hip hop video, and I'm like, this looks awful, like awful. And the women that they chose to play the parts, again, I'm out of the loop, so I don't know who's big and hip these days. I mean, I kind of felt like you're referencing the last go round with Charlie's Angels. We had Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, Drew Barrymore. I mean, these were popular actresses who it seemed to make a pretty interesting little ensemble, and those films were a little more self-aware, I think. They took themselves not so seriously. They were meant to be action comedies, I believe. Whereas this, I can't tell what the tone is supposed to be. But I don't know who I like. Kristen Stewart is the hottest actress now to do this. I don't, and I'm kind of getting this whole and again, I'm just trying not to, everything I've heard about it so far, like, but they're trying to make it so they're not girly girls, you know, they're tough because this is what, you know, strong female leads have to be at this point. But Kristen Stewart, she's got the butch haircut, but then she wears the wigs over it. Like, look at me, I'm a badass. I don't have to, I don't know. I don't get it. It just all looks so, the whole thing I mean, again, this took the record as the worst trailer I've ever seen. I mean, just terrible. So, yeah, everything about it looks awful, and I kind of hope it dies a slow death. And by the way, why are there 3 Bosleys? Is that what I'm supposed to understand from this?
Yeah, I'm looking at IMDb, and it's saying Patrick Stewart is a Bosley, Djimon Hounsou is a Bosley, and Elizabeth Banks is a Bosley. I don't know. Is it trying to say that, like Charlie, it's a code name of some sort? Although at the end, didn't that sound like the original Charlie?
That sounded like the original Charlie. So I kind of was like, it was like the last second they pulled some reference to the original show, but yeah, it kind of, it almost seemed totally counter to everything they seemed like they were trying to set up with this. It was almost like this movie was trying to be like the non-Charlie's Angels. You know, we're not your daddy's Charlie's Angels. We're new, we're badass, we're cool. And then they do that. I mean, I thought the point of having Elizabeth Banks as Bosley was trying to give us kind of a girl power sort of a thing.
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. I mean, again, we don't take orders from men. You know, women. The women. Okay, fine, whatever. But then they had the other 2 guys who were also listed as Bosley. So I kind of went, wait a second. I mean, Elizabeth Banks was the only one in the trailer that said, "I'm Bosley." So I thought that was what I was supposed to get from this. But then, like you said, the other 2 were listed as Bosley also. So what is that about? And then, like you said, the last shot of the trailer was, "Good morning, angels. Hello, Charlie." And I kind of
that was definitely John Forsythe's voice.
It absolutely did. Yeah, I mean and he's got to be up there at this point. I'm shocked that he can.
He's dead.
He is dead. Well, I thought he was dead until you just said that. Then I kind of went, wait a second. So you think they're just grabbing clips from the old show, I guess, as opposed to finding a sound
the
alike?
previous movies. Who the hell knows?
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, they were obviously imitating him the best they can, or getting clips. Either way, yeah, I don't know. The whole it just seemed baffling, and talk about something we didn't ask for or didn't want. I mean, if you're gonna do something like this, get the biggest actresses, the biggest, strongest names you can get, and I don't know, do something that's a little more spectacle. This just seems like it seems extremely disposable. Again, just a ripoff of John Wick, the Kingsman, etc. Could care less.
On principle, I can't negotiate with these people. Well, then you know what needs to be done. We're going to protect our citizens.
Make no mistake, my brothers. The humans will draw first blood. When the air is still and the night has fallen, there's only one question you must answer. Who will you stand with?
The human government develops a cure for mutations, and Jean Grey becomes a darker, uncontrolled persona called the Phoenix, who allies with Magneto, causing escalation into an all-out battle for the X-Men. Written by Simon Kinberg and Zach Penn, based on characters created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, directed by Brett Ratner, X-Men: The Last Stand. Ooh, you know what's funny? As the start of the movie, I was into it. It was starting off, okay, and then it's like watching the stock market go up, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, everybody's selling, and just slowly starts trickling down into junk. What the hell happened here?
I'm gonna let you get a little momentum going before I chime in. So tell me, my friend.
Oh, goodness gracious. Where do I start? So, screw Cyclops. I mean, poor James Marsden shows up for, what is best an extended cameo. What in the ever-loving hell did they think, split personality for the Phoenix? Okay, I guess that kind of works, but the hell? Why is the Professor blaming Logan for Jean's flip to the Phoenix? Why is Kitty acting like she has no friends at the X Mansion when she's been mentioned in like 2 movies previously? Why is it the only instance of the Sentinels that we get is just a head and that's the end of it? You can't even see the entire thing. It's just a head that just pops out here. What in the hell was Arlie Emery doing expositioning, about get your plastic guns, get your plastic bullets? Why the hell did they not take the mutant power dampening kid and just walk him over to Jean? Did anybody think about anything logical with this movie?
And that's a good point. I didn't think about that. They should use that kid to. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, like they stopped the Juggernaut that way. Here comes the Juggernaut into the room. Okay, his field is probably kind of weird, but they could have come up to her. She was busy making water go up in the air and bridges and stuff, and turning people to ash and stuff like that. And getting rid of the weird Hug Me Hedgehog guy and his 2 associates there, they're just kind of. I love that. It's like, we forgot about these 3 guys, these 3 henchmen of Magneto. Quick, we got to do something more. Let's have them run. We'll turn them to dust. Boom, done. I really feel like there was something here, and then it just went off in this weird direction because it started strong. It started really. I even texted you. You know what? This starts pretty strong. I didn't like the de-aging effects. I did not. They look.
Agreed.
They did not look good when you compare it to the de-aging effects that they're doing now. It did not translate very well. Okay, but I kind of like that opening. But it also, at first I liked that opening. It's like, okay, a little backstory on Jean. This is nice and everything like that. The backstory on Warren, on Angel, I love that. I love that he was so, humiliated that he was basically trying to scrape his wings off and everything like that. I thought that was great. And holy smokes, is there anybody in this world that could play Beast better than Kelsey Grammer?
Right? Totally.
So right there, I was all on board with this flick. And then Scott is mopey, and he goes away to Alkali Lake. Which, why? What was the point of that? What was he expecting when he got there? And then Jean kills him. Okay, because now they're doing this whole thing with this whole split personality thing with Jean that it's like, oh, no. See, the Phoenix side of Jean loves Wolverine, and the Jean side of Jean is the one that loves Scott. Oh, that's just brilliant.
Well, that's interesting. I never even actually thought of it that way before, but I think now that you mention it, I go, oh yeah, that is kind of what they were doing there.
And the funny part is they could have made all of that work because when I mention it now, it's like, okay, you know what? That's actually pretty logical. That would explain a lot, and it would also explain why Jean just kind of takes Cyclops out of the picture for no apparent reason. Okay. They could have done so much with this idea of a dueling personality within Jean, and they didn't, because they were more focused on the mutant cure plot. And because of that, they short shafted both Cyclops, they short shafted Jean Grey. This could have worked, and it became much more frustrating to watch because of how it could have worked and didn't. And by the time Jean Grey does kind of go on quote-unquote all Dark Phoenix, it's like, who cares? Here I am watching this movie, and all the things leading up to the point where Professor X dies, and it's like telegraphed so much that by the time he actually does disintegrate, it didn't shock. I didn't feel anything. I was like, oh, I suppose that was a neat effect. That was Professor X just blew into a million freaking pieces, and that was my reaction. That's not good.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I'll tell you what. Let me just come out and say it. I like this movie, and I like it a lot.
Wow.
I honestly, I will say it is absolutely positively a flawed movie. That's for sure.
Yes.
I'm absolutely not going to praise it and say it's perfect. This might be one of those movies where, let's say, the general consensus was that it was great. I might be sitting here poking holes, saying, "What about this? What about this?" But since it's kind of the other way around, I'm actually pretty happy to say I really like it, and despite its shortcomings here and there, I kind of don't know why people don't get this movie. It's weird. When you said it starts out strong, I had a very similar feel. I mean, as I'm watching it, I'm kind of going, wow, does this start strong? First of all, like you said, Kelsey Grammer as the Beast was spectacular casting. Spectacular casting, and I thought they got the look perfectly.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny, because honestly, I felt like they got it so much wronger. I thought they got it very wrong when they went back to First Class and changed his look. And I thought you should have left well enough alone. He looked great in the other ones. But I kind of thought everything in it, like you said, the build up and the structure, the things that are happening and the things that carry over from X-Men 2 and progress. I mean, you have the little subplots with Rogue and Bobby and Kitty. There's a little triangle that's starting to happen. That works for me. And the stuff about the mutant cure, I thought that is a great storyline. And honestly, I thought that was sort of a natural progression. When Magneto is standing there saying that they're going to draw first blood, etc., the war has already started. They are, I loved all that. I thought that was really good. So the part about Jean Grey, yeah, it's weird, and it's kind of, I can understand comic fans being frustrated that what was such an incredible story. And again, it's funny. One of the things I noticed watching this is like, wow, they really did mimic a lot of stuff when they did Dark Phoenix. Mm-hmm. That whole little subplot of, like, I forgot the parts about Wolverine hollering at Professor Xavier, "What did you do?" And you did this and you did that. And I was like, boy, this is a flashback. I didn't remember that being so prevalent in this film, but there it was. So yeah, that's, but anyway, the Jean Grey stuff is obviously, and again, like we said in Dark Phoenix, it's not a story that can be sort of shoehorned into a traditional 2-hour narrative.
And this isn't a 1 hour and 40-minute movie.
Yeah, right. I mean,
with already a huge concept in The Cure. But please, I'm sorry, continue.
Right. No, I get you. And again, it was almost like, well, they should not have touched it in X-Men 2. Honestly, if they just left that alone, you might have just left that out and done the whole Cure thing and left the whole Jean Grey thing out. But having said that, again, is it a proper representation of the source material? No, that's for sure. But it wasn't terrible. I kind of thought all of that stuff was at least mildly interesting. So I didn't mind it the way a lot of people do at all. Having said that, it does lead to some weirdness. For example, like you said, Cyclops shows up long enough just to get sort of bumped off, and he's gone, which I since read that this had something to do with scheduling conflicts. The schedule just didn't work, and Marsden was just not available. So they only really got him for what was essentially a cameo. Why would Scott not be there? Well, the only way he would not be there would be if he was killed, or something happened to him to take him out of the story. This was what they came up with, and I agree with you. It leaves you feeling a bit weird. It was so weird that when I saw it, I was absolutely convinced that he was going to show up in the end. I thought for sure he's not really dead. You know, he's not dead. He's just missing. So I don't know why everyone just assumes he's dead, frankly. I thought for sure he was going to do a reappearance at the end and, save the day or do something. No, they really did just bump him off. And yes, again, I understand scheduling constraints, but yeah, that's just a missed opportunity, and that was done very oddly. And again, James Marsden once again playing the role of nice guys finish last.
It's like his career.
It really is. It really is. I've never seen The Notebook. I just happened to catch it only because I was on a flight and my girlfriend was watching it. And I was like, oh, wow, there's James Marsden doing the same thing again. The nice guy who gets screwed over.
He did that in Enchanted. He did that in Superman Returns. He did that in Notebook. He did that here. He did that in Westworld. What the hell? I feel bad for the guy.
Oh, my God. So yes, again, there are a lot of weird things, and I will also agree with you, by the way, that even Professor X getting bumped off, and it's funny because I kind of noticed this before, but I really got my head around it more this time. What is wildly frustrating about that scene, if they wanted to bump off Professor X, and again, I'm sure that they always knew that they were going to bring him back. I'm sure, I mean, the after credits scene, or, when he wakes up in the body of the homeless guy.
Yeah. The man without a soul.
What's that?
The man without a soul.
Yeah, right. That was telegraphed right from the beginning. So you knew they were going to sort of pull that one. But the frustration is, and again, I guess the point of that was, A, for just a memorable moment, I guess, but B is, I suppose you could argue that it's because it's so that the team will learn to rally without him. Come together as a team, because there is that moment where, there's the moment where they a very short conversation about how they're going to shut the school down. Mm-hmm. Beast is saying, yes, this was a place for mutants to come. And then Storm stands up and says, "It still is. We're staying open." So it was almost like, all right, guys, come on. You were never going to close the school. Just don't fool around. But anyway, so the frustration with them bumping off Professor X was that they go into the house. Magneto comes in with him. Sort of an homage to how they did it in the old days. Fine. But again, he literally Magneto's walking in clearly saying, don't listen to him. He wants to control you. Yada, yada, yada. Well, then it was almost like this kind of poorly written moment where they're trying to get the two of them together. But if he's so adversarial from the moment they walk in, get him out of there. Like Wolverine, yes, get Magneto out or do something. I don't know. I guess maybe he can't at this point and he just knows. He just has to deal with him being there. But it just seems sort of odd. It was almost like he resigned to the fact that Magneto is going to walk in with him and counter every argument that he makes. But that's not even the big problem. The big problem is that Professor Xavier has been there for Jean her entire life. I want you to come home. I want you to do this. And Jean is flipping out, and disintegrates Professor Xavier. Then Magneto walks over and says, "Come with me." And she says, "Okay." And she gets up and leaves with Magneto. So, yes, that scene is wildly frustrating. I can't, that bothers me. So, yes, the film is flawed. But honestly, I really do say at the end of the day, I think this is a great film. I really do. I feel like, again, it's the natural progression of everything to lead up to a full-blown, battle. At Alcatraz, the scene of him moving the bridge over is awesome. I mean, that's pretty amazing, frankly. A lot of the effects really stand up today. And the fact that it ended with them finally all squaring off. I mean, you got Pyro and Iceman finally squaring off and having a battle. That was really good. I love the idea of Iceman finally coming into his own, becoming full blown ice. You know what I mean? Like we know from the comics and the cartoons, etc. All of that I thought was really well done. I loved the arc of the angel. That was, again, a very small thing happening in the background, but what a great moment. His father happens to be the guy who's all against mutants. So, of course, the kid is going to flip out trying to cut his own wings off. Then he won't go through with the cure. The big moment where the wings come out, I thought was really nice, really good looking. And then when he busts out the window, takes off. The effect of him passing the trees, there's a moment where he's flying past, like the trees are you're seeing him fly off through some trees. Mm-hmm. Looked oddly realistic. I really thought that was well done.
That's because one of the things I do give credit to this movie is when they were flying and falling and stuff like that, Ratner insisted on practical effects. So those weren't CGI or anything like that. They were all in wires, and they just removed the wires to make it look better. So a lot of the physical stunts were physical.
Yeah. I mean, tell you that stuff was really good. And then, of course, he has the arc, where he's the one who rescues his father, thanks to his powers. I mean, that was really good. I mean, honestly, I thought there was so much about this that works.
How did he get there?
What's that?
How did he get there?
He could fly.
Okay, the X-Jet arrived just in time after the thing had gone down. This is the X-Jet we're talking about here that can travel at like supersonic speeds. The X-Mansion is in New York. They're in San Francisco.
Right. Okay.
And he didn't get on the X-Jet. They specifically had a scene of him at the X-Mansion looking as the X-Men left on the X-Jet.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's a hell of a flight. I'll give you that. Maybe they should have used like Governor's Island or gone back to the Statue of Liberty, so it didn't. The explanation of how they got so far away is not so strange. But I'll give you that. I mean, it's a bit of a hike, but again, I mean, is it really going
symbolically speaking? If it had ended at Ellis Island, that would have been better, and they could have used the George Washington Bridge instead of the Golden Gate Bridge, and then the explanation for Angel getting there just in time to save his dad would have been less questionable.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I'll agree with that. I mean, and again, like I said, there are plot holes and clunky things about this film for sure. But anyway, honestly, I really did feel at the end of the day, a lot of this was really good. I mean, again, the Juggernaut, that's a tough character to do. So I didn't mind that, and I didn't even mind the little memes. I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. I mean, I probably didn't even like see that before. I don't even know if I was aware of those memes at that point when everybody was sort of complaining about that and how stupid it was that he said that. I kind of had no problem with it, frankly. I thought his character was sort of like that he would just say that. Didn't bother me at all. So yeah, again, like I said, am I pulling a Butters? Maybe.
I thought it was pretty good.
But I like it. I like it a lot, and I really feel like it stays very much in tone with the one previous. Listen, we've been dying for a movie that we genuinely disagree on, so this might be it.
Dude, I don't know. Did you discover have you been swimming in puppies or something? I feel like you've gone soft.
I like I said, put it this way. Maybe it's a matter of I feel that people overinflate X-Men 2 as being more than what it is. That they think this one is such a departure. Like I said,
it's not. It's not that it's a departure. It's just I don't. Look, here's my thing. If this movie had maybe been like 2 hours and 15 minutes, like X-Men 2 was, maybe all the little parts that aren't adding up plot-wise would have made better sense if they had actually, tried to really expand upon some of the concepts they were going with. The problem is that this is an overloaded movie. You've got two major plots that they're trying to combine into one movie, and then they gut those two major plots by giving a limited run screen time. So, in a way, it doesn't service either plot very well because of that. And that's my biggest problem with the movie. I saw where they were going with the idea of Phoenix, and I liked it. And I really wanted it to work better than it did. But the problem is that they didn't let it actually grow. And I loved the Cure plot, and I thought it was a great plot. But again, it felt like, as I'm watching that there was just a whole lot that wasn't there, that didn't make it in, that would have maybe made it better. It's obvious to me that the director wanted like the Cure plot more than the Phoenix plot, because the Phoenix plot was literally like the Z plot of the movie. Like, she was barely mentioned. She's just sitting there in the background, waiting for her moment. It's like, see, Gene, this is what we're going to do. It's like, okay, this is my moment. It's like, the hell? She gets a tiny moment in the beginning, little moment in the middle, and then a little moment at the end. That is all we get of this really interesting take on the idea of the Phoenix. I think it could have worked, but it didn't, because they didn't give it the proper amount of time. And because they tried to split it up, this is the movie's biggest problem. It did not have focus. It didn't focus well enough on either of the main plots to make both perfectly coherent. It's fun. There's a lot of fun moments. The scene of Wolverine running through the forest where the Brotherhood of Mutants are hanging out and him just taking people out left, right, and center, I love that. That was great.
Yeah.
I got a huge kick out of that. And, hey, give me more of that when it comes to Wolverine. Weirdly, they did, because that's kind of sort of how he went out in Logan, but that's another story. And I loved Magneto's speech. I felt that he was very true to his character throughout the entire thing. Like, when Pyro's talking like, if you just told me to, take him out, I would have done it. And him like,
Yes.
Shut the hell up, kid. I liked the little spanking. But he was gentle about it, but firm. Which I loved. You got to love Ian McKellen's acting at that point.
Absolutely. I thought that he pulled that off terrifically. That was the proper response. That was great.
Yeah. But the problem is because everything is all over the place, there's really not a lot of time for anything else. Like, some mutant powers just seem to be there. Like, what was the point of the pincushion guy? Like, at one point, Magneto says, you always send the pawns in first. Why is pincushion guy not a pawn?
Well, maybe because he was friends with the other girl mutant that he needed a little bit more, so he figured, well, I guess I can't throw him in because I want to keep her happy. I don't know. I actually thought there was a few mutant powers. The guy, the multiplier guy.
Yeah.
I found that to be a little weird.
He's
I don't
based
know
on an actual mutant character from the books, yeah.
Right, yes. I mean, and honestly, that's probably why I don't criticize a lot of that stuff. And by the way, too, again, I find a lot of the Easter eggs to be terrific. In fact, you brought up, you were complaining about the scene in the Danger Room with the Sentinels. Honestly, I thought that was awesome. I remember when again, kind of harkening back to the first time I saw the film, I saw that scene and I was like, wow, not only did we finally get the Danger Room, but we finally got a look at a Sentinel. Now, again, this is back then. I know that they're not going to work Sentinels into this plot, so why the hell not put in a scene where they're fighting a Sentinel? And again, we're talking about, limited budgets and special effects that aren't spectacular yet. Would it have been nicer to see the Sentinel in its full glory? Them fighting it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, but again, can you really... I don't know if that was feasible to shoot it. I thought the head showing up looking like a Sentinel, again, it's one of those moments where not everyone is going to get it, but if you're a fan of the comic, you'll get it. So I thought that was great. I really thought that was really cool. Again, how much expense can they put into that little scene? I don't know. Could they have done more with it? Maybe. But again, I don't know. I thought what they gave us was great. See, again, I feel like the people who, and this includes you, who don't like this movie, they're really criticizing it for the potential of what it could have done. And I feel like I'm just sort of reviewing it based on what it actually is. Again, could they have done more with this? Yeah. Could we have gotten like a more expanded Jean Grey story? Yeah. But again, just based on what it is, I didn't find a lot of problem with what we got.
Do you feel that Jean Grey's story was her arc from the beginning of the movie to the end was satisfying. Do you feel it was a good arc?
Look, I find it to be, in a lot of ways, it's the least interesting part of the movie. I will grant you that. It's, again, I'm certainly not hyping this up as anything wonderful. I find it to be like an X-Men 2. You could argue that there's this kind of subplot with Wolverine trying to find his background, and then he goes to the lake and the base, et cetera, and by the end, he's kind of come to some terms. And, you could argue that, well, that, didn't get enough time, and they didn't flesh that out enough, et cetera, et cetera. I find this to be, again, it was a major story in the comics that gets, unfortunately relegated to a subplot in one movie. So again, is that story getting its due? Not in this movie, no, and unfortunately not in Dark Phoenix either. But again, it's kind of like I just sort of take it for what it is and say, well, at least, I mean, it's almost a glorified Easter egg, frankly. Not so much a big subplot. I mean, again, it's akin to, focusing on Wolverine in the second one or Rogue at certain parts. This was just Jean's arc in this story. And again, she falls in line with, Magneto uses her to do things, even though, again, I would even argue that not maybe to its fullest potential. But again, I thought the Cure, in my mind, this movie is about the Cure and the full-blown civil war, for lack of a better way to say it, between the mutants and the humans. Like, I mean, again, they hinted at it at X2, where Magneto was going to turn the kid and kill all the humans or whatever. Here, I thought this, and frankly, this is sort of even better, frankly, because this seems to be, like, much more realistic and keeping in terms with the characters. Like, that was sort of almost like an afterthought, like a last-minute thought, Magneto, let's kill all the humans. Which kind of, frankly, I still sort of look back on and go, is that what he would really want to do? Does that, like, is the point for all humans to be dead and just everyone is a mutant now? I don't know. But this one, I felt more natural. It felt more organic to the story of the X-Men, where it's persecution. It's about the fear of mutants by humans, and again, he's saying the humans are they're gonna be the ones to draw first blood. They're gonna take this to whatever. Boom. There's the things in the guns. There you go. That's exactly how this is gonna start. I honestly, I thought that. I mean, in terms of the story in that respect, I mean, that's where I find that it thrives. I feel like that story is a perfect natural progression to everything that we've sort of come to know about the X-Men and the conflicts of mutants, etc. So again, all this stuff, all the complaints about Jean Grey, I get it. And again, it's not a very, like, I mean, if you want an actual adaptation of that story on screen, yes, this is not that. I certainly agree with that. But in terms of just trying to pay sort of like homage to it in a way, I can't really complain. I just felt like it was okay. Again, and they alluded to it in the second X-Men, and it progressed to this in the third one. So I'm not that disappointed with that stuff. Maybe I should be. I
don't know what to say, man. I kind of just feel like there's a disconnect that you're having of some sort. I hate to be like brutal like that, but I feel like,
bring it. Again, we need conflict on this show. Come on, bring it.
Who are you is what I'm trying to say here, because I'm like, how is it you're being so lenient with this movie and its inconsistent way of handling character? And it's, I agree with you that the Cure plot is a fascinating plot that I thought they did okay with, but doesn't deserve the superlatives that I feel you're throwing at it. And the fact that you're relegating, you're talking about, oh, well, Jean is more like a side plot. Well, if she's such a side plot, why is she the huge focus at the end? Okay, here's a situation where you needed to choose one storyline and stick with that. You should have either started with and stayed with the Phoenix storyline, or you should have started with and stayed with the Cure storyline. And I'm here to tell you that I feel like this movie should have ended with Jean being found and not started with Jean being found. That they should have held her off until another movie, but for whatever reason, it was like they threw everything in here, and the fact that any of it works, I'm going to give a little bit of credit to Ratner for that one. Somehow he managed to make what is there work in some respects, but it's still a hodgepodge. It's still messy in its exposition and its storytelling. It's still not a complete story for a lot of the characters and main characters. You know, okay, granted, Magneto gets his arc and gets his ironic end of, oh no, he loses his powers, which they then nullify, like, right at the end. Like, literally, the whole point of this movie is these mutants are losing their powers. Rogue gets her arc where she chooses to try to lead a normal life so she can touch people again.
Yes.
Which is, I'm not one of those people. People are like, it's so against Rogue. It's like, I understand why you think that, but in this character's version of Rogue, that is a logical progression for the character. I don't have a problem with that.
Exactly, I agree. Go ahead.
What I have a problem with is that literally this movie was for nothing. Because in the end, they're going to get their powers back, as demonstrated by Magneto moving his hand. It's like, if you're going to go so far as to be like, oh, don't worry, there's still the possibility of a sequel, then why not hold back a storyline as needing a decent backstory to really get across as the Phoenix Saga for the next flick? Why not just wait until the next flick? You know, because you're obviously setting up the next flick if you're going to throw Charles Xavier into the body of a homeless man and make sure that you see that Magneto moved that metallic chest piece just the littlest bit. So we know Rogue's going to get her powers back. So that's going to be a whole other thing. In the end, the entire story of this movie is for nothing. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. A war started between the humans and everything like that. Jean shredded a bunch of people. You know, there was a cure, but now the cure isn't going to work. There's no plot line here that it's like you feel like it's like if they had ended with him losing his powers and they make no further mention of it, I would have called that bold. If they would have ended it with Professor X dying and then not showing, you know, the body coming back to life, again, I would have called that bold. It would have felt more like an actual, they called it The Last Stand. This makes it sound like that this is it. This is the last of the X movie. And from that era, it kind of sort of is. But then they retcon the hell out of it as the movies come on in the future. I am reviewing this movie not just in what it was given, but what it eventually became. And I have to, because this is where we are right now. But even then, even without the future movies, immediately all the stakes that they put out for these characters, all the changes that they do are like nullified right there at the end. So anything that was ventured, anything that was lost, that entire moment of Ian McKellen playing the shock of, oh my God, I'm human, which was beautiful, gone. What was the point of that? The whole movie feels like an extreme example of frustration. It feels like that this movie, like the whole reason Brett Ratner directed over Bryan Singer is because at the time Bryan Singer was working on Superman Returns. This movie would have benefited from like maybe 5 or 6 months of pre-production, because there is something here. It just doesn't come out in the end, in my opinion.
And listen, I absolutely I hear what you're saying, and I only kind of casually disagree. I feel like, first of all, a lot of there's a lot of times where I think people will get frustrated by a very typical movie trope, which is, yes, we made everything look dire and everything is coming to a close, but then we leave with a glimmer of hope. There's the James Bond movie. I'm kind of going way out there to make a point. License to Kill. James Bond goes rogue. He goes off on revenge. This is all crazy. He throws his career away. He resigns, etc., etc. In the last few frames of the film, there's a random line. Oh, I got a call from M. I think he's got a job for you. And it's like, oh, so all of that is sort of like, we're just going to paint over everything he just did, and we're going to make sure everything goes back in place before the movie's over. Yeah, that I can understand that frustration. But I also, again, feel like there's nothing unusual about, when a film goes all off track, all down one road, and then leaves you with a little glimmer of hope at the end. I mean, I feel like every Marvel post-credits in some way is doing that, the promise of things to come. This was just nothing more than a little tiny little glimmer of, it's not over yet, more to come. So I didn't really mind that, honestly, at all in this. The thing with Professor Xavier I thought was a little stranger, because again, I thought that it seemed to me that they were setting up something a lot bigger than it actually was. I thought maybe X-Men 4 would come up and Professor Xavier is struggling to take this new form or do something. I don't know. I thought that was going to go somewhere, but it doesn't. Magneto nudging the thing didn't bother me. Yeah, and I feel like you said a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong to feel the way you do. A lot of these things just didn't bug me, and I feel like it's I don't know. You're gonna pick and choose things that bother you, and they did this wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I personally feel like you're wrestling with the potential that it could have had, as opposed to looking at it for what it actually is, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that you're wrong to do that. I mean, again, I could be pulling a Butters.
I thought it was pretty good.
But again, most of that stuff just didn't really bother me. There was nothing about it. Like I said, the clunky parts I've talked about, and I'll talk about a little bit more when we get to our Who Asked You. But again, for the most part, I just felt like it was a pretty reasonable continuation from the last one, and honestly, it was brought to what I felt to be a proper conclusion.
Since the dawn of existence, there have always been moments when the course of history shifted. Such a turning point is upon us now.
They wish to cure us, but I say we are the cure.
But can you give it a reasonable score?
You're not gonna like this, my friend. I am giving this one an 8. I mean, I really did. I watched it again. When you said it started out strong, I completely agreed, and it was like there was nothing that happened that really made me kind of fall off the rails. I thought that everything, really did seem to move at a pretty logical progression. We got new characters. We got a lot of Easter eggs. We saw things. Again, we had a Magnificent Beast. We saw the Danger, and we saw a Sentinel. We saw the war that Magneto kept saying was coming finally came. And I mean, honestly, when they were throwing flaming cars at people, I was like, this is really good. The background people, I thought Rogue's struggle, Rogue's decision to, whether or not to get the cure, I thought that was very well done. You see Bobby getting frustrated and looking elsewhere because he can't, be intimate with his girlfriend. And I thought the line was good. Listen, I've never put pressure on you. She goes, I know what every guy wants, or such and such. I mean, again, that seemed to make perfect sense. And Magneto's progression was great. His speeches were great. So yeah, by the time I got to the end, I thought things were falling in line exactly the way they ought to. I will concede the Jean Grey part. I don't find that to be very interesting, frankly. But it just, again, of an otherwise very good movie, I thought, okay, so that was the part that was just okay. Nothing special. But honestly, I thought if you like X2, you frankly should like X3.
Killing me, Smalls. I gave this movie a 5, which, yes, means I do recommend that people watch it. It is watchable. I'm not saying it's not a watchable movie. It just is overloaded. And I think it falls over on the weight of itself. And I can't be quite as forgiving as you obviously can. This is like the whole opposite of the Godzilla thing all over again. I was willing to forgive the Godzilla movies because Godzilla movies themselves, they're not supposed to make sense. It's just big monsters and blah 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 blah. And I kind of enjoyed it for the few things with the monsters. And you were like, well, I didn't enjoy that because the camera, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I can totally concede your point. In this case, I just felt that they got some of the characters right, but some of the characters they short shafted. And short shafting the characters because they couldn't wait a couple of months for Marsden to be available, or the insistence that they do, since they set up the Phoenix thing, that they do it immediately as opposed to just focusing on the cure. These type of characterization shorthands are just terrible to me. And I'm big on character. If you're true to the character, if the character's progression makes logical sense, I'll forgive just about anything. But here, the loss of Cyclops, the bastardization of the Jean Grey character to just make her fit within the cure thing, I would have been so much more happy with this movie had they focused on the cure and just pushed the Phoenix story to the side. Because putting that in made it too heavy, made it too much of something that it didn't need to be. They could have easily just made it all about the cure and ended it with the Phoenix coming back to life. And that is the movie's biggest problem, because they tried to do too much, and while some things worked, too many other things did not. And I'm not going to cut a movie slack for its failures to overpraise their accomplishments unless there's something within there that just truly spoke to me. But in this movie, it didn't speak to me the way it spoke to you, which is pretty much the difference of opinion we have. So that's my 5. I still think you should watch it because it's inoffensive. It does have some great moments, but it is not a great film.
There's you said a lot there, and I'm sort of dying to. I won't go too crazy because I know we're kind of running long, which is fine. But listen, but again, you sort of in what you're saying that the Jean Grey character got shoved to the back burner or dismissed because they were trying to do the other plot. And again, I that to me is, you're almost saying straight out, because you know the story of this character from the comics, you know what this story should have been. And again, I'm simply saying that if you look at Jean Grey as played by Famke Janssen in 1 and then 2 and then 3, I feel like her story does follow a logical enough progression, and I did it get the attention that you would have liked it to have? No. But again, I didn't find anything about her character within this specific universe. Again, Rogue is a whole different character from the comics. There are people in here who have been adjusted to fit into what they perceived as a cinematic expression as opposed to their comic versions.
I actually conceded earlier that I kind of liked the idea of where they were going with the character. Yes, it was different from the comics, but I would have liked to have seen it come to fruition better. The idea of the dual personality Phoenix as opposed to the cosmic Phoenix, I even said earlier, that's an interesting way to go, especially within this universe. And I would have liked to have seen them fleshed it out better. My feeling is that they didn't flesh it out enough to truly justify it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, again, listen, I love it. We finally, this last few episodes, we finally had some things that we disagreed on, and I'm loving it. So this is, It's all good stuff. But yeah, we will just have to agree to disagree, my friend, because again, I found it to be wildly enjoyable, and well played. Okay. I like this.
No, ain't no thing, man. And I completely get why you feel the way you do. Absolutely, I do. I can see why you would enjoy the movie. I still think you're nuts, but I can understand it.
My inner Butters has shown through in this episode, but I'm okay with that.
I'm going to be using that sound clip a lot.
There you go.
Who asked you, my man?
Who asked me? Well, again, I will go to the scene at Jean Grey's house, and I will say the idea that, again, she's sitting here with these two men who are Professor Xavier, who has nurtured her entire life, as far as we can tell. I shouldn't even say as far as we can tell. They showed us in the film. They showed flashbacks, etc. For some reason, he's trying to beg her to come home. He gets obliterated, but Magneto says, "Come with me," and she says, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And they just walk out. And for some reason, he is very able to control and manipulate her. That I find to be very tough to swallow. I don't understand that, so that will be my Who Asked You.
That's a pretty good one. For me, I started the show. My Who Asked You list, I basically went through the start of the show with about the de-aging effects, Cyclops, Logan getting blamed for Jean's flip to the Phoenix, Kitty's previous incarnations and all that, the leech not being walked over to Jean to nullify her power. But you know what really got me? And the thing that I just was like, what the hell? There's a scene on the prison truck that's being driven around with Mystique. Okay? She's on the prison truck, and she's messing with the guards. And she's like, "I'm the president, let me out of here." It's like, what the hell is the point of that?
She's messing with them. Why not? I find that to be very in with her character again. She did similar in X-Men too.
I just... Where did she do that? Where did she do that where she shapeshifted purposely to people that knew she was a shapeshifter in an environment where she was at their mercy? Where did that happen in X2?
Wasn't there a scene? Am I confusing the films? Wasn't there a scene where she was captured and interrogated, and didn't she take Stryker's face at one point or something? Or am I mixing things up?
You're mixing things up a little bit. She wasn't captured in all of X2 at any point. She did take Stryker's face, but that was to manipulate Mastermind to kill all the humans instead. But there was nothing like that. She wasn't captured.
All right, I guess I'm having a brain fart. Sorry.
It's okay. And honestly, yeah, I get it. She likes messing with people's heads. It just kind of felt unnecessary. It felt like they just needed to do it one more time because they knew they were taking her powers away in a minute. So, yeah, you could have done something different with that. That would have been nice. What about for your consideration, sir?
For my consideration, and I have a funny feeling we might be picking the same thing.
I have two because these two are very big. But go on.
I will simply give it to the casting of Kelsey Grammer as the Beast. I thought he was absolutely spectacular. He really nailed this part. I don't think anyone else could have played it as well. And frankly, when they are in the jet and he's watching, I think that this is when the bridge is moving or has moved or whatever, and he says, "My stars and garters." I remember being in the theater going, "Whoa!" Like, that was great. I was so glad that they stuck that in there. So
that is not an easy line to sell, too, and he did. You're right.
Seriously, from him, it seemed very natural.
Well, you're right. He is my for your consideration. But I also wanted to give a shout out to one other thing. The stunt work and the practical effects. There was a lot of that in this movie.
Yeah.
When they're throwing cars, they were actually throwing cars. That was real cars.
Yeah.
When their kids were flying down and stuff like that, when Storm was flying and everything like that, she was on wires. And I really appreciated that. I love when they do stuff practically.
Agreed.
So I had to throw that out, but definitely Kelsey Grammer's casting as Beast, 100%. He's definitely the top dog on that one.
Nice. Listen, again, I almost feel a tiny bit disappointed that I could not. I was kind of hoping to persuade you a little bit, but again, I am also very happy with the fact that we finally have something we can disagree on and do a little battling back and forth about it but again, I think conflict makes for a good show, so I'm sort of glad that I'm glad I could not convince you.
I agree, and frankly, I feel like we both made good points on both of our sides.
Agreed.
That you know what I'm curious about. I'm curious about what your brother's going to think of this episode if he listens.
He'll probably agree with you and probably tell me that I'm nuts.
Thanks.
So, My friend, good one. And but
Yes,
again,
indeed. Excellent episode.
the marvelous marvels don't end here.
No, sir, because next week, Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm only mediocrely looking forward to it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
I mean, I understand that the way Kevin Feige describes it is that this movie is the closing of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That this is actually the last one in Phase 4.
Okay. Interesting.
But on the other hand, I just kind of feel like after the more I think about Endgame, the less I want more Marvel movies. I feel like it's done. I feel like, how do you go beyond where they are now?
That is a great question, and honestly, I do agree with you that there was a lot about the conclusion of Endgame that made you sort of say, okay, I guess it's over. It's almost, you know what? It's almost now a matter of, can lightning strike twice? Because they are going down a new road with new people. I agree with you. I'm a little trepidatious about a lot of it. So it's kind of like, okay, can you walk the tightrope and you did the backflip successfully? Are you really going to try it again? So I'm with you there. I'm a little nervous too, but anxious to see what they do.
I am too. And we'll talk about it next week. So until then, good night, my man.
Good night, my friend, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Russell, you're okay? Oh, thank God. Oh my God! Juggernaut! I thought that was you! I should have worn my white pants. You probably get this a lot, but I am a huge fan. Uncanny X-Men 183, Thor 411, X-Men Unlimited 12. You know, it has always been a dream of mine to see my face reflected in your helmet as you charge at me with murderous intent. I don't mean right now.
I'm gonna rip you in half now.
That is such a juggernaut thing to say. Oh my God! Oh my God! I can't feel my legs! I can't feel... Oh no, they're right here.